she yelled across the garage, her voice slicing through the noise of grinding tools and engines. "You're not getting paid for that junk job, Mike. That's not company business." Mike froze, a wrench still in his hand, his shirt soaked with sweat and grease. The junk job she was yelling about wasn't junk at all, it was Mrs. Lawson's old wheelchair. She lived 2 blocks away, a sweet old lady who could barely afford her medicine, let alone a repair shop fee. He'd fixed it after hours, for free. Karen, the new boss, stormed toward him, heels clacking on the concrete floor. Her badge said regional manager, but she acted like a queen. "You used company tools for personal work. That's theft," she hissed. "Pack your things. You're done." A few of the mechanics nearby paused their work, glancing nervously. Nobody dared to speak. Mike wiped his hands with a rag and met her glare. "You're firing me for helping someone?" Her lips curled into a smirk. "You're not here to play hero. You're here to follow orders." She didn't even let him clock out. Within minutes, his access card was deactivated, and 2 security guards escorted him out. That night, as Mike sat on his porch, the anger burned deep but quiet. His tools were locked inside the garage he'd worked in for 10 years. He looked at his hands, the same hands that used to build engines for armored vehicles back in his army days. He wasn't proud of what he could do when pushed. But he also wasn't someone who stayed down for long. Just before sunrise, a distant rumble made him look up. Headlights appeared, first 2, then 4, then 8. 7 black SUVs rolled up and stopped right in front of his small house. Engines idling. Doors opened in sync. His heartbeat slowed. Not fear, something else. Recognition. A tall man stepped out from the front SUV, wearing a dark suit and earpiece. "Sergeant Michael Rains," he said calmly. Mike stood, his jaw tight. "Haven't heard that name in years." The man nodded. "We need to talk. It's about what your boss did yesterday." And in that quiet moment, as the morning light hit the SUV's tinted glass, Mike realized this wasn't about a job anymore. Something bigger had just begun. The man in the suit handed Mike a small black envelope. "Open it inside," he said quietly, glancing around the empty street. The other men in suits stood near the SUVs like silent shadows, no badges, no logos, no words. Mike took the envelope, his gut tightening. The men gave a firm nod before returning to his vehicle. Within seconds, the SUVs pulled away, disappearing down the street, leaving only the soft hum of the engines fading in the distance. Mike stepped back inside his small house, the air thick with curiosity and dread. He sat at his kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside was a single photo, grainy but clear enough. It showed Karen, his former boss, standing in the same garage, talking to a man Mike instantly recognized. It was Colonel Briggs, his old commanding officer from the army. The one who'd vanished years ago after being accused of selling military equipment on the black market. Mike stared at the photo, every muscle in his body tightening. Below the picture, there was a note written in sharp block letters. "She's working with him again. We need your help." He ran his hand through his hair, trying to process. Why would Karen, an auto shop manager, be involved with a man like Briggs? And why was he being pulled into this? Just then, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Mike," a voice said. It was Mrs. Lawson, the old lady whose wheelchair he'd fixed. Her tone was shaky. "Honey, there's a black car parked outside my house. 2 men in suits. They've been sitting there all morning." Mike's blood ran cold. "Don't open your door, Mrs. Lawson. Stay inside." He hung up and grabbed his jacket. His instincts from years ago kicked in fast: observe, plan, move. As he stepped outside, he noticed something strange. A small drone hovered quietly above the streetlight, blinking red. He looked up at it, and a quiet grin crept across his face. "All right, Karen," he muttered, tightening his fist. "You fired the wrong mechanic." The drone turned sharply and zipped away toward the City, toward the same direction. The SUVs had gone. Mike's old truck roared to life, coughing smoke as he sped down the quiet suburban road. The morning sun cut through the mist, flashing over his rear view mirror where that same black drone was now following him, keeping distance, but never losing sight. He drove straight to the shop where Karen had fired him the day before. From the outside, everything looked normal. Employees were busy, customers came and went. But Mike knew something wasn't right. He parked a block away and slipped through the alley behind the building. The back door was locked, secured with a new keypad. He smirked, same model the army used on base. It took him less than a minute to bypass it using a nail and an old screwdriver. Inside, the air smelled of oil and fresh paint. But the shop floor was strangely quiet. The office lights were on, and through the half-closed blinds, he could see Karen pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. "No, listen," she snapped, voice sharp. "He's already on the radar. If he talks, everything's ruined. Make sure they handle it tonight." Mike's heart pounded. She wasn't talking about cars. She was talking about him. He slipped his phone out, hit record, and edged closer. Karen turned suddenly, her reflection caught him in the office window. "You," she gasped. Before he could move, two men in dark uniforms burst from the side room. Their vests said, HOA Security Enforcement. Mike almost laughed. Fake cops. Again. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," one of them barked, pulling a baton. Mike dropped his phone in his pocket. Raised his hands like he was giving up, but his eyes were calm. "You sure you boys know who you're working for?" he asked. They hesitated. That was all he needed. In one quick move, he grabbed a wrench from the nearby shelf and swung. The baton clattered away, one man stumbled. The other tried to tackle him, but Mike flipped him straight onto the concrete floor. Karen screamed. "Stop him. He's dangerous." Mike walked toward her slowly, breathing steady. "You have no idea," he said. Her phone buzzed again on the desk. The caller ID flashed, Briggs HQ, secure line. Mike picked up the phone, stared at the name, and whispered, "Looks like the past finally found me." Karen's face went pale. You were military intelligence." He smiled faintly. "Worse. I was the one who caught Briggs the first time." And before she could speak, sirens wailed in the distance, real ones this time. The flashing red and blue lights painted the garage walls as real. Police cruisers surrounded the shop. Karen's fake HOA cops dropped their weapons immediately. Confusion and fear spreading across their faces. Mike stood still, his hands raised calmly as officers rushed in. "Step back, sir," one shouted. Mike didn't move, just pointed toward Karen. "She's the one you want. Check her office. Computer, hard drive, phone logs. You'll find everything tied to Colonel Briggs." Karen's voice cracked. "He's lying. He broke in, attacked my staff." But before she could finish, one of the detectives stepped forward holding the black envelope, the same one Mike had received earlier. "We already know, Ms. Haverly," the detective said. "The SUVs were from the Department of Defense. You've been under federal watch for months." Her jaw dropped. What?" Mike folded his arms, quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "Guess I wasn't the only one who got fired for helping people." As officers handcuffed her, one of the fake HOA enforcers muttered, "We didn't know, man. She said we were helping the city." Mike looked at him and said softly, "Next time someone gives you a badge without authority, don't wear it." Outside, the crowd of locals had gathered, neighbors, customers, even Mrs. Lawson in her wheelchair. Looking relieved but shaken, Mike walked over to her and knelt beside her. "You okay?" She smiled faintly. "I knew you were special, son. I just didn't know how special." He chuckled. "Let's just say, some things don't rust easy." One of the real officers approached him. "Mr. Raines, the feds want to speak with you again." They said you might be reinstated, something about a task force. Mike glanced at the destroyed garage, the flashing lights, and the rising sun beyond it all. Tell them I'll think about it, he said. Right now, I've got a promise to keep. He pushed Mrs. Lawson's wheelchair toward her car, her laughter echoing softly through the chaos. As he reached the sidewalk, he looked back one last time. Karen was being led into a black SUV, ironically. The same kind that had shown up at his house. Mike shook his head and smiled to himself. Funny how life comes full circle, he muttered. Then he turned toward the sunrise, shoulders steady, eyes calm. Because in the end, justice didn't come with noise or medals, it came quietly. Like the dawn after a long, dark night.